آون دوشمية نتقداش شماخ تأثي ملكوتاخ نهوي صوينخ إكنا دوشمية أبر حولان لحمة سنكانا يومنا واشوقلان حوبين إكنا داب حنان شوق لحيوين لا تعلن نسيونا إلا بصا من بيشة مثل دي لاخي ملكوثة حي لو تشبحت العالم عالمين آمين.
Thank you, Hanny. B'Shena. Welcome, everyone. B'Shem, the Marialacha, Tashmeya, Dar'a. In the name of the Lord God of heaven and earth. All right. Before I begin tonight, even though I had Hanny open up with the Lord's Prayer in the ancient Aramaic language, I'm also going to say that short scribal prayer before we begin tonight. And then I have something a little amusing to show you, and then I will begin our teaching for this evening. Okay, I'm going to say this prayer now. Al Haile Ruche Damaran Yeshua Mashiach Misharenan Milat Milte the Maria Lacha Tashmeya Dar'a. Amen. Okay, before I begin tonight, I have something a little amusing to show you, and that is a cartoon that was sent to me just yesterday or today, I forgot which, but anyway, this is the cartoon. And you can see the two characters there, a mouse. I don't know what that other what that other animal is, the one who drew this. They didn't tell me who did it or anything, but this was sent to me. And it's about the little mouse here. And he's talking with his friend, whatever that being is, what kind of animal it is. And he says to him, the mouse says to his friend, I've started reading the Bible a little bit every day, very excitedly. And his friend says to him, do you read it in any certain order? Oh, yeah. I seek out the parts that let me judge others and avoid anything that makes me feel bad. I know a lot of people who read the Bible just for that. You like that, to let me judge others and avoid anything that makes me feel bad. And then he looks at his friend who shuts his eyes and says, what? That you would make such a statement? His friend says to him, the little mouse says to his friend, is there another way to read the Bible? There is the cartoon. Is there another way to read the Bible? I think that's so funny to think that's how a lot of people do. They read the Bible and all of a sudden they become extremely judgmental. And that has nothing to do with the teaching of the scriptures, but that's what happens. So here on our special Nuhra Foundation Studies in the Bible, we have another way to show you to read the Bible so you don't end up as a judge, but you end up as a true angel, helping and aiding and loving and caring for other people. So this is our class tonight. Sunday, when I did the Aramaic School of Light, I began to teach a little deeper in regard to Jesus of Nazareth and what he was after, and about what shifts occurred in his mind, in his consciousness, that drew him to certain conclusions. And I said in the class on Saturday that his teachings are the wisdom teachings, the ancient wisdom teachings of the prophets and of Abraham. But he was able to take the wisdom teachings and the prophecies of the prophets and distill it. He distilled it and broke it down into a common flow among people. And especially in Israel, and then it was eventually to go out to the whole world. And speaking about that, you often hear us make statements about Aramaic, and Greek wasn't the language of the Aramaic Bible. It was always Aramaic. They didn't translate it from Greek. It's the other way around. Greek translated it from Aramaic. And I told you how on the Silk Road, it went clear into China and Japan. I have some books here I'm going to quickly show you, and then I'm going to start teaching on Jesus and the wisdom teachings. This is a book, and they're not even aware of this. This was written in 1853. That's why it's hard to get a hold of. It's called The Monks of Kublai Khan, Emperor of China. And it has a subtitle, The History of the Life and Travels of Rabban Sauma. Now, Rabban means our rabbi. You're used to Rabbi, which is my rabbi, or the way we say it in English is rabbi, but it's really Rabbi. But when you say Rabban, that means our rabbi, who was an envoy of the Mongol Khans to the kings of Europe. In other words, they became the monks of the Church of the East, and Kublai Khan sent them back there. He sent especially Rabban Sauma, S-A-W-M-A, Sauma, and the Khan sent them to talk to the kings of Europe. And he sent two of them. The other one was called Marcos. Marcos, who as Lord, this is his other name, Lord Yaba Allah, Allah III, became patriarch of the Church of the East in Asia. Interesting. This is in the 12th century that took place. Here's the history on it. And we have that. Also, I have another book I want to show you. This is all about the history. It's called Of the Mountain Nestorians. That is a nickname that the Byzantine and other Christian people called the Aramaic-speaking Christians. They had nothing to do with Nestor. Nestor was in another area in Asia Minor, had nothing to do with Nestorians. And the church made Nestor a heretic, which was a big mistake. They have changed it now. They were wrong about the Church of the East. It wasn't Nestorian, and they weren't under Nestor at all. And they didn't adhere to the teachings. They didn't think it was error. They didn't count him as error. That's why they got linked with him. But it had nothing to do with this. It tells all about, this is where Dr. Lamsa was from this out there. And this was written by Dr. Asahel Grant. He's the one who went among them. And I have a picture of him here. There he is, Asahel Grant. This is in 1853. 1853. And he also wrote a book about them. And then I have another one, History of the Assyrian Church. And it goes from 100 all the way to 600 and something on the earlier stages of the Church of the East, how it went into Persia, how it converted everyone in Persia to the teachings of Jesus, and then how it spread into the Far East. How come we don't hear this anymore? And people still argue with me to this very day about Church of the East. And scholars writing about Dr. Lamsa saying that he was grandiose by calling his church the Church of the East. And that is the name Professor Hitti even uses, who taught at Princeton University for years and years. And I have all of his books here, Professor Hitti. So don't think that what you're getting here is something we're making up. We're not making this all up. But because people don't know it, they think it never existed. But I have books, history books, lots of professors, everything, who did tremendous work on this. Now we can get to the idea of Jesus' wisdom teachings. Why did I even call it wisdom teachings? Why? Because Jesus himself received a nickname. And what was that nickname? The nickname was wisdom. And did you know that's in the scriptures too? It's right there. Jesus is called the wisdom of God, right in the scriptures. He's called the wisdom of God. And let's take a look at the word wisdom again. It is the ability to apply understanding and through experience and depth of one's understanding. So that was what wisdom does. It opens up understanding. It opens up insight. Wisdom knows how to do that. And so Jesus is called the wisdom of God. And you know who wrote that and said that? The Apostle Paul, what we call the Apostle Paul. I'm going to get the scriptures right here. And then I'm going to get into the wisdom teaching. All right, let me see. In 1 Corinthians, the first chapter, and let me get it, the exact verse, 24th verse. But for those who are called, both Jews and Arameans, Christ is the power of God and the wisdom of God. The Mashiach, the Messiah, the Anointed One, is the power of God and the wisdom of God. Oh, I love, in fact, I'm going to read this whole thing to you. It's just wonderful. He says, because the foolishness of God is wiser than men. You know, God has no foolishness, but he's writing like that, just to make a comparison. But the foolishness of God is wiser than men. Why is he calling him foolish? Because you see, our Messiah has been crucified. Our Messiah is not here physically, and yet he is the power of God and the wisdom of God. And that's what they are calling foolishness, is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. For consider also your own calling, my brothers. Not many among you are wise in the terms of worldly things, and not many among you are mighty, and not many among you belong to any nobility. And he has chosen, but God has chosen the foolish ones of the world to put the wise to shame. And God has chosen the weak ones of the world to embarrass the mighty. And he has chosen those of humble families in the world, and the lowly, and those who are insignificant, in order to belittle those who consider themselves important, so that no one should boast in God's presence. But you, and it's plural there, it's plural, it's aton, you, plural. But all of you also belong to God through Yeshua, the Anointed, or the Christ, who from God, here it is again, who from God is wisdom, and righteousness, and sanctification, and salvation to all of us. As it is written, he who glories, let him glory in the Lord. And in Hebrews it says, for he, referring to, well, let me read the verses above it. Hebrews 1, 2, and 3. From of the ancient days, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets in every manner and in all ways. And in these latter days, these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son. Remember, this is written to the Hebrews, whom he has appointed heir of all things, and by whom also he made the worlds. That's from John, first chapter, and the second and third verses. That's the reason he comes to that conclusion. For he is the brightness of his glory, meaning God's glory, and the express image of his being, upholding all things by the power of his word. That's in Hebrew. Jesus is the wisdom of God. And remember the Trinity. I told you the Trinity, Father, Son, and Spirit, was Father is mind. Son is wisdom. Now you see why they call the Son wisdom, and the Spirit, the Ruach, they call life. So we have mind and life, and in between mind and life is wisdom. In John, it's broken up into three also. Mind energy, the first chapter of John, mind energy, and that mind energy is life, and that very life is light. There's the three. So mind energy, life, and light. There's a Trinity again. So the life, the one in the middle, Father, mind, Son, wisdom, and then life is Spirit, because Jesus gave the Spirit. So, and in John, it's the miltha, and the miltha means energy, mind energy. For from mind emanates word, wisdom, and life, which is light. It's a light to our being. So the teachings of Jesus, as I said on Saturday, including his parables, are wisdom teachings, but they're very down to earth, practical, and very sound. But people don't go for that. And people, I've heard criticism on the teachings of Jesus, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, from the higher ups of people, from their intellect, not from their intelligence, from their intellect. And they just put down all the teachings of Jesus. I have books on that too. I've read them. I had to read them because I wanted to see how people took. This is why we're still in trouble today. We're in trouble today because of that. Okay, that's a good background to prove to you that Jesus is the wisdom of God. His very being expressed the wisdom of God. He is the brightness of God, and that brightness is his wisdom. And we have his teachings. But do we hear it? Do people study it? Do people implement it? We don't do that. And as a result, this is why we're in problems today. So, one of my best, that I think is one of the prime teachings, although all of his teachings are prime, but to me, one of the prime teachings of Jesus is this one that we call the Beatitudes, which means the happiness sayings. The Beatitudes comes from Latin, meaning the happiness sayings of Jesus. And the one I'm going to talk about is this one right here. This one in Aramaic. He says, Tu wehon l'makiche dechenon nertun ara. And we translate it, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Now, I don't translate it, the word blessed. It's not wrong to use the word blessed. You can use that. But it's coming from the word to be in sheer ecstasy. It means to be in extreme joy and happiness. So I translated. There's several ways you can translate it. Delighted, but that wasn't strong enough. When I did my book, I wanted it stronger, and I looked it up in my dictionary, and it's blissful. Blissful. It's more than delighted. It's blissful. Are the meek. And then it says, for they shall inherit, or they inherit literally, they will inherit, for they will inherit the land. I know that's been translated the earth, and we get a misunderstanding. The whole earth, you're going to inherit the entire global world? No, no, that's not what it means here. The word ara has many meanings in Aramaic. And by the way, this is taken from a psalm. Jesus took the psalm and changed it. The psalm said, but the meek shall inherit the land and delight in abundant peace. That's from Hebrew. That's the Hebrew. And that's Hebrew Psalm 37:11. Psalm 37:11. Now, I translated, blissful are the gentle. But you see this word makihe, and it's in the plural form. Literally, it's blessed are the meek ones. It's in the plural form, makihe. Blessed are, or blissful are the meek ones. It comes from the root word mah, M-A-K-H, but very soft, mah. And that means to bend all the way down. It means to lie down flat, like you're before an emperor, where you put everything down flat. But it's not talking about literally lying down. It's talking about your mind, your thoughts, your emotions are bendable. Now, here's the wisdom of Jesus. And this is why he says, you want complete happiness? You want to be happy? You want to know bliss? Okay, here's the way of bliss. Here's the wisdom teaching of Jesus. The way of bliss is to be pliable, amenable, bendable. And that means softness in the mind, the thoughts, really the thoughts. Too much of us suffer from arthritis of the mind. In other words, the thoughts are calcified and they sting and they hurt. And because we're always in, as that fellow said in that little cartoon there, well, I like to read about it, help me to be judgment of others. And that's exactly what's happened to a lot of people who read the scriptures too. But the wisdom teaching of Jesus is to humble one's self. That is the secret. Humbleness. If you read even stories in the Old Testament, those people who became judges, they were humble. They were humble people. And they bend like Gideon. Israel was in trouble. They were constantly having trouble with other little kingdoms that were invading and doing different things. And the whole time of the book of Judges, if you read it, they run on. It's like a roller coaster. They run high under the judges, and then the judges go, and then they go down again. Then they ride high under the judges and then go down again. Why? Because they lose that leadership that is humble, meek. It doesn't mean you're not strong. To be humble takes a lot of strength. It does. To be meek, to be pliable, to be bendable. Let me tell you, the trees that bend in a hurricane and in a wind of high velocity, it takes strength to allow yourself to bend and go all the way down. And then as soon as the winds release, up you come. So nothing was broken. You are bent. And what makes a tree bendable? What makes them strong? What makes them strong is the sap. The sap makes them strong. In other words, more of the sap that's in the tree, that's in the limbs, it's all that, that means you can bend it. That's why it's hard to break certain limbs and certain branches, because there's too much sap in it. And you can't break it. You can't break it. No sap, you break it easily, because the flow of the life of the tree is still in the branch, is still in the limbs of the tree, and therefore you can't break it. You're dependable and come right back up. And when the winds of adversity come against us, bend with the wind, but you'll rise again. That's what Jesus did when he was crucified. He did not resist those who were going to crucify him. He didn't resist it, not at all. And what happened? He became stronger than ever. And you know, people haven't learned that. Government hasn't learned that. Using the whip and using things that are wicked and trying to make people bend to your way doesn't work. It only works for so long, then all of a sudden there's a rebellion. It's bound to come. It's bound to come. So part of the secret way of Jesus, that is the wisdom way of Jesus, is his ability for us to thrive in the midst of adversity. And that's why he is the wisdom of God. And he saw this himself. He saw his people in his community demonstrating this. And also when he sat outside the city where some of the elders would sit, the older people who had enough experience in everything that they brought their trouble to, you know, they were called also peacemakers. Peacemakers. It's more of the wisdom of God. The trouble is, we don't have peacemakers today. We want revenge. So who wants a peacemaker when you want revenge? When you want revenge, when you want to do all that, you can't have peace. You're going to have war. But the thing is, when the war is over, one will be the winner and they subject the other. But what Jesus was saying is, with meekness, the one who wins doesn't crush the one who lost, but they both surrender to God and surrender to one another. Rather than, you just surrender to me because I won, I beat you. That is not meekness. Meekness means you surrender to each other, and when you surrender to each other, you surrender to God. And that is the way of God. And that is our problem today, because we think of God as a person. Even when they, in the Roman Catholic Church, when they define the Trinity, 3 persons in one, and even fundamental Christians use the same thing, 3 persons in one. Not per persons is not correct. It's kenome. Kenome. That's Qnoome. Kenome. Or kenome. Either way you want to say, or kenome. Either way you want to say that. And that means an emanation. God itself is not a person. It is not a person. God is not a person. I know people think of that when they read the scriptures, but God is not a person. God is mind. Remember, the Father is mind, the one who creates, mind, and then the wisdom, because the mind expresses wisdom, which was the Son, S-O-N, and which then brings life, which is light. And I like the conclusion in the Gospel of John, which is the light of humanity. Humanity has this light, but it's dormant. It's dormant. And as a result of it being dormant and not awakened, and this mind is pure intelligence. Mind is pure intelligence. That's the wisdom. Intellect, we collect things in our intellect. Intelligence is different from intellect. Intelligence is an expression of wisdom. You intelligently work at something. You intelligently bring peace. You intelligently, and this is what we're missing. And we have a government called intelligence government, but that's not the real meaning. Intelligence means they're going to go searching you out. But this intelligence is different. It's wisdom. It is wisdom. And this is the way of God. Yeah, but these things are not taught in the churches. In Sunday school, even when they teach the Bible, they don't know how to teach it. They don't know how to teach it, how to understand the wisdom that is there. And Jesus knew how to break it down. And we don't even use Jesus' teachings to it. We just make it, remember to be nice to your neighbor. When we read the story of the who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? That's how Luke expresses it, but it's more than that. More than that. And we miss the real depth of the wisdom of Jesus' parables. And it's so opposite of the way of the world. And people today were fooled because wisdom does not force. Wisdom does not force at all. Wisdom does not use force. And yet, to try to win people over, they use force, and force is a threat. It's a threat. And even in religion, to bring people into Jesus, I'm sure the apostles didn't go around telling people, they're on their way to hell. You're on the way to hell. If you don't accept what we have done with Jesus here, if you don't accept him, you're on your way to hell. They never taught such a thing. You won't find that anywhere in the Bible. You won't find that in the New Testament, where hell was threatening people. Jesus is the one who uses Gehenna Denura, hell, fire. He's the one who uses it, but it's an idiomatic expression, which means regret and torment. And he was, instead of saying, thou shalt not kill, or thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not, Jesus used another language. He said, if your hand offends you, cut it off. If your eye offends you, right out, pluck it and throw it away from you. So so your whole body doesn't fall into hell fire or hell, because you put yourself in torment when you do these things. You put yourself where you're not living free, because you're having something that's not yours, and you've taken something that's not yours, and you're not living free. That's Jesus' language. That's what he was talking about. You put yourself in torment, absolute torment. For it's better to do without that thing you want than to get it wrongly. And we, killing a person doesn't always just meaning actually taking their body. It can also mean trying to ruin their reputation, trying to smear them, trying to do something like that. That is killing a person also. But the person who is doing that, making the smear, doing that, they are doing something to their cells in their body. They are doing things into their whole being. Their being is being put in hellfire. to be able to destroy another person verbally, you have to have that energy and that lie to go with it. And that lie is eating up your soul. That has to be faced. That has to be faced. And no one gets away with anything. So Jesus' teachings are wisdom teachings. They know how for us to get along. That's why he says, when your enemy approaches you, don't curse them. Don't put a curse on them, even though you may feel like it. You want to do it. And let me tell you, in the Near East, they know how to curse. They know how to put a curse on people. That's what it means, cursing. It doesn't mean saying cuss words. Cuss words is not cursing. In the Bible, when it talks about cursings, it means you are putting an absolute curse saying on that person. You are telling them, may you have no children. May you have no bread on your table. May you lose your job. May you, all these other things, that's how they curse in their East, and it's even stronger than that. But that's what they do. And I was brought up in an Italian family, and they do the cursing the same way as they did in the Near East, because I'm my generation, my mother's generation was the first generation born here in America, but my grandparents and all of those who were coming from Italy, they still had a lot of these old ways of cursing. Just saying curse words doesn't do it. You have to do something deeper than that. And that means you have to conjure it up. And if you are conjuring it up, then that means that will return to you, because you're the one who is thinking it up to send it. So you are the source. You are the source of that. And that will backfire. You put yourself in Gehenna. So Jesus knew what he was talking about when he talked that he said these teachings, all the Beatitudes, they're all wisdom teachings. And when he talks about prayer, when he talks about fasting, when he talks about healing the sick, when he talks about all those things, certain things cannot be healed unless there's a lot of fasting and prayer. This is part of his wisdom, part of the wisdom. And people want to know how? Through fasting and prayer. And sometimes that word fasting means the person you're paying for also needs to fast. They need to fast for the healing to take place. So the wisdom teachings of Jesus is because he is the personification of wisdom. And the scripture also tells that, I read that last week, and that is on Saturday. I read it where it says he grew, and it means to increase in his stature and in his wisdom, in favor or in grace with God and with people. I would have loved to have seen and felt Jesus. You know why? Because he is the express image of God. God said, let us make man our image and our likeness. Okay, what did we get? What did we get? We got, at least the stories in the scriptures, we got a rebellion on the hand. The first thing, the man and the woman rebelled, and they ate of the tree. Then they were put out of the garden. Then you have the murder that Cain committed. Then, and it goes right on down the line. They ignored the truth of their being. And as a result, Cain couldn't take it. He ignored the truth of his own being. He could not take that his brother Habel, or Abel as we know it, that Habel was doing so well, really well, and being all the blessings he was getting. And poor Cain, no, he was jealous. He was in competition. That's why Jesus wanted his disciples not to compete with each other, but to love each other care for each other. You're not here to outrank the other one. You're here to express your own unique image of God. You need that in your work. You need that in government. You need that in everything. And the church doesn't teach it that way. The church doesn't teach the uniqueness of the expression of God in every single person. Wherever they are and whatever they occupy and whatever job they have, whether it's a high official or someone collecting garbage, it doesn't make any difference. That expression of God is there and can be blessing wherever you are and whatever you're doing in the family, among relatives, or whatever. I'm telling you, these are the teachings that need to get out. And once you do that, then we have peace, we have joy, we have healing of mind, healing of emotions, healing of family relationships, healing of all the things that happen in a family, happen in a community, happen in a city, happen in the metropolitan places, all of that. But we don't emphasize that, and we don't help people help themselves to their own inner uniqueness of heaven on earth. That makes the difference.